So, Attack on Titan has come to an end, and you're probably thinking, Nick, you've already made a video about Attack on Titan's ending. And I have, and you're right. I have already made a half-hour-long video all about Attack on Titan's ending. However, because in content, if you're not first, you're last, I made that video before I had even seen Attack on Titan's anime-only ending. See, that entire video called Attack on Titan's Ending is a Nightmare was basically me telling everybody why I don't like Attack on Titan's manga ending. And while obviously Attack on Titan's manga and anime didn't have that different of endings, at least not nearly as different as people hypothesized they would be for years and years, there was actually some incredible key differences between the Attack on Titan manga and the Attack on Titan anime when it came to closing out the story. And while it wasn't like I was watching an entirely separate ending from the ending that I had read in the manga, I must say I enjoyed the anime's ending way more than I enjoyed the manga's ending. So there are some still pretty key concerns. But now that the ending of Attack on Titan has been out for roughly a week, and the majority of you have already probably watched it, I figured there was no better time for me as a manga reader to sit down and show you what the key differences were between the manga and the anime. And more importantly, orate why I believe that the anime ending did a better job at closing out the story than the manga. But this isn't me saying that I now enjoy the ending of Attack on Titan. I still believe that there's a lot of issues with it. But between the sound design, pacing, sticking to themes, and a couple of key changes in dialogue, I believe that the anime has landed on its feet when it comes to closing out a historically legendary story. So all in all, I'd like to say that Attack on Titan's anime-only ending was not a nightmare. In fact, it was pretty good. And today we're going to address why there's a key difference between the manga and the anime's ending. But before we get to addressing the differences in anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear me talk all about Attack on Titan's ending in full glorious detail, then go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Taku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you just want to look like somebody who has opinions on Attack on Titan's ending, guys, go ahead and meander on into my merch store, takusanonymous.net, where you can get some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, Attack on Titan has come to a close. A legendary 10-year story about trying to get Eren back. That's a joke, but like at least 50% of Attack on Titan is, oh my god, we need to go get Eren back. But with the ending of the story, at least in anime format, the public perception to Attack on Titan's ending has been pretty positive, which is exactly the opposite of what I anticipated would happen about a week ago. See, because here's the thing. Attack on Titan's manga ended about 2 years ago, and it was not well received. See, between the mangaka flip-flopping on what themes they wanted to land on in the final few chapters, the death baiting of important characters like Jean and Connie, and an overall kind of unsatisfying shoulder shrug of an ending of Isayama saying, well, you know, humans love war, so no matter what Eren did, nothing was really gonna make a difference, left manga readers all across the world with a bad taste in their mouth. And I was one of those people. I did not like the ending of Attack on Titan, and when it comes down to just the manga ending, I still don't. However, somehow, MAPPA and Wit have managed to adapt the ending of Attack on Titan's manga in such a way that the anime makes it more palatable. And now, instead of people calling for Isayama's head like they did when the manga finished, which by the way, you should never do, it feels as though to me, the public perception of the ending of Attack on Titan online is way more positive than it was 2 years ago. But why is that? Was it the pacing, the animation, the sound design, the fact that manga readers are inherently more stuck up than anime watchers? Or was it key specific differences made in the anime-only ending that don't exist in the manga? Well, unfortunately, my answer is E. All of the above. See, if you take a step back from the story of Attack on Titan and don't look at the last episode as a capacity to end a legendary story, as an episode of anime, Attack on Titan's final episode is very good. One of the chief complaints with Attack on Titan ever since MAPPA took over is the fact that the animation kind of took a nosedive. While I'm not usually one to complain about animation, I can't help but acknowledge the fact that that is kind of the case. Now, you could say anything that you want about the fact that what MAPPA was trying to animate was much more complicated than what Wit had to animate, but I don't actually subscribe to that theory at all. The first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan are incredibly action-packed, and Wit did almost all of that animation with next to no CGI, which is why the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan are objectively gorgeous. However, when MAPPA took over in the 4th season with the invasion of parody and the war against Marley and so on and so forth, you could see that MAPPA was much more heavily reliant on CGI than Wit ever was, with one of the better examples being Eren's battle against the Warhammer Titan. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that this animation is bad. It just straight up isn't, but it's different, and it's CGI, which makes a lot of people take a step away. But I believe that Kengan Ashura is one of the greatest fighting anime of all time, and that is 100% CGI. So I might be biased, or maybe just too unbiased. But even if you do believe that Mappa's art direction and style made season 4 the worst looking out of all of the seasons of Attack on Titan, it is impossible to deny the fact that this final episode is at least the best looking episode that Mappa ever created. As I believe that really the only meaningful time that CGI was used in this final episode is when large crowds of people were walking, or maybe when the Beast Titan was throwing debris at the airplane as everybody was coming in to kill Eren. I guess at that time they were coming in to rescue Eren, but this entire episode probably contained more gorgeous set pieces than the entirety of the rest of season 4. Whether it was Zeke coming out of Eren's ribcage and staring upon the beauty of the world, Armin and Eren in their colossal Titan forms coming fist to fist with each other in an all-out brawl, which might have been CGI, but if it is, I genuinely could barely notice. But maybe the true piece de resistance was one of the final scenes of the episode, and that was Levi and Mikasa flying their way towards Eren's mouth to decapitate him. And in this moment, we got an iconic Levi moment eerily reminiscent of his battle against Kenny, where our camera follows Levi as he uses his ODM gear to fly between obstacles at an insane, neck-breaking pace, all accumulating with him firing off a javelin rocket that explodes into Eren's mouth that allows Mikasa to punch through his teeth and decapitate him without a second thought. This scene is inarguably one of the prettiest scenes in the entirety of Attack on Titan, and it's scenes like that that make you forget, or maybe just straight up not notice, that there's a couple of plot holes happening while those scenes are going on. And there's also the fact that when it comes to pacing, this episode probably has the greatest pacing in all of Attack on Titan. Now, this is mostly because the ending of Attack on Titan is incredibly hectic, and a lot goes on, as really any ending of any substance has. However, in a very anime/manga way, there's a big final boss that needs to be defeated, and with the felling of the final boss usually comes a ton of action. And while when it comes to action, the anime adaptation is a very faithful adaptation of the manga, there's a massive difference psychologically between reading an action scene and seeing an action scene. The stakes feel higher, there's music swelling in the background in accordance to what's happening. And even I, as somebody who knew how the story was going to end, was gripped on the edge of my seat as Connie and Armin and Reiner and Mikasa and Levi all battled for their lives against Eren. And that's the key difference between manga and anime. See, manga moves at the pace you make it move, and thus, at least I know whenever I'm reading a manga, I have time to be more analytical about what's going on. However, when I'm at the mercy of 30 frames per second of sheer, incredible, awesome animation, I'm not really looking around to see what's going on, I'm just hyper-focused like a child watching Cocomelon. And thus I genuinely believe, especially in moments of high action, you can get away with a lot more in an anime than you can in a manga. I mean, sure, obviously I could pause every 30 seconds to be like, what's going on here? But that's boring. And on top of that, that also brings me out of the moment. It strips the emotions that I'm feeling by watching this away from me right then and there. And therefore, since Mappa did such a great job with animation and sound design, a lot of people who otherwise probably would have been able to identify a couple of the key problems with Attack on Titan's ending just didn't. Because, ooh, pretty colors and, oh, I like how this song matches the moment. On top of that, I would bet my entire life savings on the fact that those who wait for Attack on Titan's anime to come out are substantially more patient and understanding than those who made sure to read the manga every single week that it came out. I mean, watching Attack on Titan and knowing that the story is finished and all you have to do is go pick up a book, and still choosing not to do that because you want to watch the ending in the form of an anime, is an act of patience that most manga readers simply didn't do, obviously. So for the sheer fact that manga readers aren't the most patient people, and the fact that a manga can be read at whatever pace you choose, and there's no music, I believe that manga readers as a whole had a chance to be more analytical and over-observant about what was going on in Attack on Titan's manga, which allowed manga readers to identify the key issues with its ending. But as somebody who not only reads the manga, but also watches the anime, I not only had preformed biases going into the final episode of Attack on Titan's anime, but also knew what my chief complaints were heading into the final episode of the anime, which was objectively very silly because I should know that anime always hits way harder than manga. Do I ever cry to MHA's manga? God, no. Do I cry at least once a season to MHA's anime? Yeah, and that's because, to me at least, music is incredibly important. But there's a lot more to Attack on Titan's anime ending being better than its manga ending than just music in pretty colors. There's also the fact that Isayama, the author of Attack on Titan, fully understood that people did not like that ending. And boy oh boy did people let him know exactly why they did not like that ending. So much so that Isayama has apologized for individual moments that happened within Attack on Titan's manga ending. And therefore, since Isayama and Mappa had 2 years between the ending of the manga and the ending of the anime, Isayama made a couple of corrective changes to the ending of the anime to make sure he got less death threats this time around. So let's go over the changes that were made and talk about why we believe those changes were made. And while I could go chronologically, unfortunately, I don't remember exactly how all of them were laid out chronologically, and boy oh boy did I not take notes while watching this episode. So I'm gonna go from levels of non-importance all the way up to levels of massive importance, as there was a couple of changes that were made that a lot of people aren't talking about because they weren't all that important. Though, the fact that any changes were made between the anime and the manga does raise an eyebrow, and therefore it's hard not to speculate why these minor changes were made. The first minor change that was made focuses on Ymir, and specifically on Ymir's pig titan, which is actually an okapi, which isn't a pig at all. Okapis are Congolese, that is, that they come from Congo in Africa, and they're referred to as the forest giraffe, as genetically they are very similar to giraffes, but they are also referred to as the zebra giraffe, as their back legs have zebra stripes. They are a genetic wonder and an incredibly confusing animal on par with the platypus. And in the manga, we're never really told why Ymir decides to make an Okapi Titan, as the Okapi Titan just kind of shows up, eats Armin, and runs away. However, in the anime, we were treated to a scene of Ymir remembering one of her first memories, which is the memory that forced Ymir to run away from King Fritz. And that is when Ymir accidentally left the pen to the pigs open, which allowed the pigs to escape. We're not shown this scene in the manga, and therefore the anime is loosely implying that the reason that Ymir makes an Okapi Titan is something to do with the pigs that she had a relationship with prior to becoming the founding Titan. But considering the fact that everybody believes the Titan to be a pig until somebody's like, oh yeah, that's an Okapi, could speak to the possible fact that Ymir summoned a beast Titan of one of the 9 Titan shifters that was closest to a pig in order to capture Armin, because of her connection to pigs through the fact that they were the reason that she got hunted down and eventually became the founding Titan. But in the manga, it's just kind of like, oh, an Okapi showed up and it ate Armin. Not really a matter of great importance, but a difference between the anime and the manga. But the differences between the anime and the manga weren't all additions. Some were subtractions. You see, because there's a moment while everybody is flying on top of Marco's bird Titan form, that Gabby tells the crew that she remembers when she shot off Aaron's head with the anti-Titan rifle. When Aaron's head spun off, a centipede-like being climbed out of his spine and reattached his head to the rest of his body. Because of Gabby telling everybody this, they begin to speculate that that must be what the founding Titan is. And therefore, Reiner and everybody else create the plan that when they blow off Aaron's head, Reiner will go down and wrestle the founding Titan. But in the anime, they just straight up skip that. Well, obviously, Reiner still jumps down and wrestles the centipede. They don't give Gabby her true comeuppance, as the only reason that everybody knew that a centipede was going to shoot out of Aaron's spine to try and snag his head was the fact that Gabby had already decapitated him. And for the life of me, I can't really figure out why they would subtract that. One, telling everybody that takes all of 30 seconds. And two, it's incredibly crucial information because, yeah, the only person who was present the first time Aaron was decapitated was the person who did it, Gabby. And yet in the anime, it kind of appears as though everybody just moves on instinct the second they decapitate Aaron. And the only reason that I can think of why they would possibly leave this information out is because of the public reception of Gabby. I think Isayama as a mangaka is fully aware that a lot of people hate Gabby, and therefore cutting out her key moments in the final battle against Aaron was a way to make people enjoy the final more. And therefore, by making sure that she doesn't play an integral role in disseminating information with the people actively trying to start the rumbling, the people who dislike Gabby are kind of getting what they want. That is genuinely the only reason I can think of, because it's kind of a crucial moment, and to just cut it entirely was odd to me. And the last kind of non-important change they made between the anime and the manga is after Aaron's death, because pretty much the entirety of everything that happens after Aaron's death, that is, after he gets buried, is pretty substantially different between the anime and the manga. See, after Aaron gets buried in the anime, we see a couple of shots of people coming to visit his grave. Those people appear to be Mikasa, Jean, Connie, and eventually Mikasa and Jean's child. Now, a lot of people are saying that the idea of Mikasa and Jean having a child goes against what happened in the manga, but in chapter 139.5, we see that Mikasa comes to Aaron's grave with a baby and with somebody behind her who could only really be Jean. Now, obviously in the anime and the manga, we really have no confirmation as to whether or not it's Jean, but he's tall, he's wearing a hat, he has long slick back hair, it's Jean. So this isn't necessarily a difference between the anime and the manga. Mikasa always ends up coming along with her new husband and a baby, and then she comes back when she's old with the entirety of her extended family, and then she dies of old age, wearing the scarf and all. Now, the literal next manga panel is the destruction of Paradise Island. And this is where the manga and the anime separate pretty massively. See, if we assume that the technology of the Attack on Titan world places them somewhere in the early 1910s, that would mean that Mikasa dies probably somewhere around the 1980s. The next panel of the manga, which shows the destruction of Paradise Island, shows technology eerily reminiscent of what we currently have now in 2023. However, ironically, when it comes to war equipment, we've had a lot of it since around the 80s. Whether that be the stealth bombers that are shown, or the SAM rocket launching trucks that are on the ground, even the buildings on Paradise Island that are being destroyed appear to be at least from around the 80s, which would imply that Paradise Island really only stood for about 100 years after the rumbling. Which means if hypothetically Paradise Island is being destroyed in the 80s, there's a possibility that some of the people that saw the rumbling are now seeing Paradise Island destroyed. However, that's not the case in the anime. The anime actually gives us, I guess you could call it, a somewhat happier ending, as the anime actively tries to show us that we're not in the 80s. In fact, we're far beyond the 80s before Paradise Island gets destroyed, as Paradise Island manages to grow massive, futuristic like skyscrapers that eventually get wiped out by rockets, which is a small little reprieve, I guess, to tell us that everybody who was involved in the rumbling is long dead prior to the destruction of Paradise Island. Now, obviously, the actual ending of a little boy and his dog finding the tree where Eren was buried, which is now eerily reminiscent of the cavern that Ymir went into to find the founding Titan, is the same in both the anime and the manga. But the timelines on this happening between the anime and the manga have now been separated by a couple of hundred years. But enough about the changes that don't really matter all that much. Let's get into the changes that do matter. And ironically, the majority of these changes come from one moment in Attack on Titan's anime, and that is Armin and Eren's conversation. See, the reason that this is the biggest thing that's changed between the anime and the manga is because this is the moment that most manga readers complained about. See, in the manga, when Eren and Armin are having their conversation and going through different parts of their lives and traveling to different things that they wanted to see or have seen together, Eren is telling Armin all about why he decided to start the rumbling, about how during the medal ceremony he saw the future that was laid out for him and began to cry because he realized he was going to have to kill 80% of humanity, and how he's done all of this to set Armin and Mikasa and the rest of the survivors up as the most important people on Earth, the people who managed to stop the rumbling, the saviors of the world. And in the manga, Armin responds to this with, "Oh, thanks for becoming a mass genocider for us." Exactly what he says is, "Thank you for turning yourself into a mass murderer for us." Which, you know, what the hell, man? Not, "Hey man, thanks for almost killing us when we were trying to kill you, purposely keeping us at a distance and not telling us anything that was going on until, you know, after we had murdered our best friend." Nope, what we decided on was, "Thank you for becoming a mass murderer for us." Now, Isayama received a lot of backlash for this because Armin was actively against the rumbling, and therefore him just being like, "Oh, yeah, no, I get it. Thanks for doing that," was kind of ridiculous. And thus, Isayama heard that critique and decided, well, we're not going to do that in the anime. Because in the anime, Armin instead says, "Thank you for taking me outside of the walls," which is something that Armin is actually thankful for. And on top of that, there's more anime-only dialogue added. As Armin holds onto the seashell that he found 2 years ago when him and Eren had gone to the coast, he, on top of saying, "Thank you for taking me beyond the walls," says that he also holds responsibility in the fact that the rumbling happened, as Armin believes that he himself has also been an extension of the war machine, most likely coming from the fact that he feels an immense amount of guilt over the amount of people he killed in the battle against Marley. And then, instead of closing off with saying, "Thank you for becoming a mass murderer for us," Armin is actually the person to assure Eren at the end of their conversation. See, because at the end of Armin and Eren's conversation in the manga, Eren tells Armin to save the world beyond the walls. But instead of Eren telling Armin to save the world after he just actively killed 8/10 of it, Armin says, "Don't worry, I'll see you again in hell," as he's taking responsibility for 80% of humanity now being gone. But there's actually more changes than just that small piece of dialogue. See, when Armin is asking Eren how he feels about Mikasa and Eren just goes, "Nah, she'll move on," Armin slugs him. That happens in both the anime and the manga. However, in the manga, Eren falls into the ocean that they're standing at, and the ocean turns into the Titan footprints. The difference between the anime and the manga is that those Titan footprints in the anime are filled with a sea of blood, to most likely draw symbolism to what happened between them finding the sea and this current moment. On top of this, Eren reaching into the blood and pulling out a mess of hair and teeth does not happen in the manga. And on top of this, while Armin does find his seashell in the manga, there's added dialogue of Armin telling Eren that the seashell was always at his feet, which is supposed to symbolize Armin telling Eren that he was always so concerned with what the future would bring that he never looked around him, which I thought was a really cool moment because yes, from the moment that Eren made contact with Historia, his entire focus was forward. In fact, that's the entirety of the slogan of the rumbling, constantly going forward. And thus this moment of Eren acknowledging the seashell that Armin has, and Armin being able to tell him that he should have taken more time to breathe in the beauty around him instead of concerning himself with the future, was a pretty nice add in the anime. But maybe the most important fix made between the anime and the manga, something that a lot of people aren't talking about, is the difference between how the manga and the anime deal with Eren going back in time to send the Smiling Titan after his mother instead of Bertholdt. See, in the manga, it's just kind of loosely implied that Eren had to send the Smiling Titan after his mother instead of Bertholdt so that one day Armin could get the Colossal Titan. But as Eren is telling Armin this incredibly important information about how he was able to alter the events of history, Armin, as he sees Eren getting emotional, just grabs his hand and it's boom, on to the next scene. This brought up a lot of very logical questions. The biggest one that I had, and something that I talked about rather extensively in my other video about Attack on Titan ending, is if Eren had the ability to go back in time to make sure that Bertholdt survived, why wouldn't he just alter the future? I mean, if Eren had the ability to make sure that the future that he saw would happen, why wouldn't he have the ability to make sure that other futures happened? Insofar as it went in the manga, there was really no answer for this. However, in the anime, they decided to add just 2 lines of dialogue that answered this question in its entirety. Well, not really. It kind of brings up other questions, but it's better. See, in the anime, not only does Eren loosely imply that he had to send the Smiling Titan after his mother, but after that admission of guilt, Eren also admits that he's tried and tried and tried to change this rumbling future. However, every single time he tries to change the future in any meaningful capacity, the same future happens, which means that even though Eren could see the future, he couldn't change it. That's it. That's all we needed. But when you say in the manga, oh, Eren went back in time to make sure that this timeline happened, it brings up the incredibly logical question of why'd he do that? Is he acoustic? But when you show the fact that he had to slide through reality to change the events of history to make sure that this timeline panned out, and tell us that he's tried to make sure that this timeline wouldn't pan out but had no control over it, that answers our incredibly large gaping plot hole question. But it does lead to some other questions, because here's the thing. Technically, Eren does have the ability to change history. He was able to make sure that the Smiling Titan didn't eat Bertholdt and instead ate his mother. But if hypothetically he didn't do that, that would have led to a drastically different timeline, as Eren's mother would now be the Colossal Titan. Now, since Eren has the capacity to make sure that his mother doesn't become the Colossal Titan, this would kind of contradict what he said about how he's tried to change the future but had no ability to do so, as he's already done it. And really the only answer to any of this is that Eren had no control in forcing the Smiling Titan to eat his mother. That is to say that the actions of Eren forcing the Smiling Titan to eat his mother have always and will always happen, which when you consider how the Founding Titan sees time, and that is as a flat circle, which means that all things that have happened, are currently happening, and will happen are happening all at once, this would kind of makes sense. This means that in Attack on Titan, there is one true timeline, and the decisions of Eren have always happened, are currently happening, and will happen to make sure that this timeline happens. And Eren, though he can see this timeline, is a slave to this timeline, and therefore he technically had no choice in the role of making the Smiling Titan eat his mother. And that's really the only logical explanation. But us having that possible explanation is a whole lot better than me just being like, he could have made the world different. But speaking of making the world different, that is exactly what Isayama did with the anime ending. And while the anime ending is not perfect, as it's still wrought with the same issues as the manga ending was, like the fact that Eren technically loses the Founding Titan the second he's decapitated in his Founding Titan form, and then somehow turns into the Colossal Titan whose abilities he does not have, and who he would only be able to turn into if he still had the Founding Titan, who he does not have. The anime ending also didn't address the battle between Reiner, Annie, and Pieck against the Founding Titan, as just like with the manga, we see the three of them wrestling against the Founding Titan, but then after Eren dies, that fight's just over, and therefore we don't know if the giant centipede thing is dead or not. We also never really get the answer as to what that giant centipede thing is in the first place, as there's still a massive discourse over whether or not it was the founding titan or just a symbol of life. And there's also still the slight confusion over Ymir's true intentions. Yes, she wanted to be connected to all Eldians through the path because she craved connections, but she also wanted all humans dead, and basically everything that she does in the last episode of Attack on Titan kind of rallies against that idea. I mean, sure, she captures Armin as the Okapi, but she also allows Armin to use the paths as a rallying center for all the previous 9 Titan shifters that they knew, they being Armin and Zeke, which is something she could have pretty easily shut down considering the fact she controls the paths. But when you're listening to the incredible sound design, good animation, and breakneck speed pacing that was this final episode of Attack on Titan, it's pretty easy to not bring up those problems. I mean, like, sure, what happened with the Founding Titan is going to bug me for the rest of my life, but it bugs me way less in the anime adaptation than it does in the manga. So all in all, was the Attack on Titan's anime only ending perfect? No. But was it substantially better than the manga's ending? Yes. And for that, we gotta tip our cap to Mappa, to Wit, and to Isayama. They took one of the least popular manga endings of all time and made the public reception of its anime adaptation overwhelmingly positive. Well, maybe not overwhelmingly positive, but at least like 70% of people liked it, which isn't bad numbers. And they managed to make me, a certified hater of the manga's ending, into an appreciator of how this story has come to a close. So once again, hats off. But what did you guys think about Attack on Titan's anime ending? Did you read the manga? Do you believe that the anime ending is better than the manga? Do you like the changes that they made? And are you happy with how Attack on Titan has come to a close? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Like, did the giant centipede just fade away when Eren got decapitated? Did everybody just decide to let it go? Did Reiner eat it? I need to know.